Ho ho hello, thank you for stopping by. My name is Becky and this is BecxReadz, and welcome back to another Fave 5 episode of Bookmas. If you hear a little jingler when I move, it's this ball in my hat. So I'm gonna try not to move my head too much. Today I'm here to share with you the 5 best historical books that I have read this year. My 5th favorite historical of the year was Vengeance Road by Erin Bowman. This is a historical YA with some like zombie aspects to it. This is the story of 18-year-old Kate, who is taking care of her younger siblings when her father up and leaves. He had the location of a hidden gold mine and people are after him for this. So when he doesn't return home, she has to set out to go find him. But in this Wild West, there are some dangerous creatures afoot. Lots of people have been infected with a disease that has turned them quite rabid. So for a young woman to travel alone across many miles to try and find her father, it is quite dangerous. So she ends up recruiting the help of these 2 brothers to help her along the way. I really liked this for the Wild West atmosphere. Like, I love books that are set in the Old West. I love books that deal with like gold mining and stuff like that. So this setting and this era really intrigued me. I like that this didn't have a lot of romance in it. There is a romance in this book, but it's very minor. It doesn't take up a whole lot of the plot. I liked that Kate was a very feisty and smart and strong character. She was willing to do whatever she had to do to take care of her siblings. And I really liked the added little zombie aspect to it. Like, it's not overpowering by any means. This is not a zombie story. But I felt like that little bit of fantastical added in there was just what I needed for this. So if you like YA historicals that are set in the Old West with some zombies, I highly recommend you check this out. My 4th favorite historical of the year was Slewfoot by Brom. This is a book that I read for my Black Hat book coven. This is a historical set in like puritanical Connecticut, I believe. This is about a young woman who was sold into marriage by her father, so she ends up in Connecticut. She is a very forward-thinking woman, and God forbid, we all know what forward-thinking women were like in that age. They were witches, okay? They were witches. She is married to this man who is very kind. He's very sympathetic. He is a very soft person. He was really sweet to her until something happens and she becomes the sole person in charge of her farm that she and her husband owned. But his brother, who is a complete and total asshat, he is trying to take the farm back from her, and she's like, screw you, buddy. This is mine. This is my husband's. We've worked for this. You're not taking our farm. And again, you know where this is leading in puritanical Connecticut. When a woman talks back to a man, yeah, she's a witch. So she calls forth the help of any being she can, and this brings forth Slewfoot, who is essentially the devil, and dangerous things ensue. I listened to it on audio, but I like looked at the pictures that were in this because Brom did illustrate the pictures as well that depict the characters. So it gave me a sense of who these characters looked like. I loved the relationship between Slewfoot and Agatha. I can never remember if it's Agatha or Agatha, but I love the relationship between them. And it sort of has this moral question of who are the real devils. I loved the setting of it. I loved the characters, and I loved how she fought back and she got her own. My 3rd favorite historical of the year was actually a nonfiction. Gasp, right? And it was Dewey the Small Town Library Cat. This takes place in the 1970s into the early 1990s, and it just tells the story of a small town library cat named Dewey. He was a library cat that was found in a library return box in a small town in Iowa, I think it was, or Illinois. It was one of those I states. And the employees of the library take him in, save his life, and he becomes like the mascot of this small town library. And this book just tells the story of his life and his shenanigans and how he affects the patrons of the library and brings together a community. This did make me tear up because it is the life of a cat. And sadly, cats can't live forever. I just thought it was a heartwarming story about the power that animals can have on people and the way they live their lives, and we should all take lessons from that. So I think even if you're not a nonfiction reader and you love animals, you should definitely check this one out. My 2nd favorite historical of the year was The Last Witch of Scotland. This is a fiction story, but it is based on the real life story of the last woman who was executed for witchcraft in Great Britain. But in this, we are following a mother and her daughter. The daughter ends up disfigured and really badly burned after she runs into a burning fire to try and save her father's life. And so once this happens and the father passes away, the mother and the daughter move to this small Scottish parish. They sort of stay to themselves, they mind their own business. It's very hard on the daughter because she does have disfigurements and a lot of scars from her accident, so it's very painful for her. But she's also having to take care of her ailing and elderly mother, who is kind of losing touch with reality. And all is going well until a new pastor shows up in this parish because the daughter has disfigurements and scars and the mother is sort of losing touch with reality and she can't remember stuff. Naturally, he claims they're witches, and he slowly turns the parish against these women. Meanwhile, we're also following the story of this man who is traveling around Scotland with this sort of band of entertainers. And one day they end up at a market where they meet this young woman and her mother, and they sort of form a relationship. I loved this for the true historical elements that were weaved into the story. I learned something new. I had never heard of this woman's story. I loved the mother and daughter relationship. I loved the relationship between the male main character and the female main character. It was a very sweet romance. It's slow burn though, so don't expect a lot of romance in this story, but it's there. The ending of this book was very tragic because it is based on the story of a real life woman who was executed for witchcraft, so you kind of know where it's going based on that. But the end took a turn that I was not expecting. It sort of had some paranormal elements to it as well. But I think if you were interested in witch history, you definitely need to check this out. You might learn something about a person of witch history that maybe you didn't know about. And my favorite historical of the year was Yesternight by Kat Winters. This is a historical fiction set in the 1920s. In this, we are following this woman named Alice who has a very mysterious and troubling past. Something happened to her when she was a young woman, and it sort of affected her life. So now as an adult, she travels around the country to different schools to test children to see if there are enough children to open special schools based on the needs of these children. And one day she ends up in this small town where she meets this young woman who has information about a life that she's never lived. This young girl is only about 9 or 12, I can't remember. But she claims to have knowledge of a life she's never lived, and her father believes her and he wants to get her the help that she needs. Her mother does not believe her, so naturally the parents split up because there was contention there. And this teacher is trying to knock out all of the rational reasons as to why this young girl could think that she has lived a previous life and she has these fears that she's never experienced. And it leads her to realizing that maybe this young girl has lived a past life, and maybe the events of her own childhood are linked to the past life of this young girl. This book has stuck in my mind because of the ending. This book took a turn at the ending that I was not expecting. I was like, holy shit, that went from 0 to 60 real quick. It took on like a thriller aspect, and I was intrigued. I couldn't stop listening to this audiobook. I loved all of the relationships between the characters in this book, the father and the daughter and the mother, the teacher and the father, the teacher and the student. I loved the reincarnation aspect of it because it just kept me guessing, like, did this girl really? Is she really reincarnated? And that ending. If you are looking for a historical fiction with a little bit of thriller, I highly recommend you check this out because it stuck with me. Those were my top 5 favorite historicals of the year. Let me know down in the comments what has been your favorite historical of the year if you read them. But if you don't want to comment that and want to let me know that you made it to the end of this video, could you leave me a little hourglass emoji? And with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow for another Fave 5 episode of Bookmas. Bye!